Hello, so I'm gonna be redrawing this Fanart I made of 12 from Terror and Resonance. I did this in 2020, like 3 years ago. I was pretty excited to redo it and fix this like horrifying face I drew. Yeah, I did this in Procreate and I used just one brush. This is basically how I made it. So I used a brush, it's called Round Brush 1. I made it from the original round brush. Here I am like showing you the first one, and then if you go down to painting, all you have to do is change like the rendering to intense glaze, and then change, what am I changing? The properties to maximum opacity, and that's literally all you have to do is just those two steps, and then you'll get the brush I used. I made sure to use this brush for both erasing, drawing, and the blending tool, so it is definitely all one brush drawing. So to start, the biggest problem is definitely the eyes. They are so scary. So I started by kind of like fixing like the skin around, making them smaller and giving them more like eyelids, basically. So now you can see after I added like the eyelids around, I kind of just fixed that eye shape. I used to do like this big, like very circular kind of looking iris and like the tiniest little pinpoint of a pupil. But recently I've really liked the look of like more of an oval, like a longer shape. I feel like that kind of suits the more like stylized look. You know what time it is. It's blush time. The way I do blush speaks to how I do basically the whole painting. I really don't use more than like 50% opacity most of the time for the brush, and I just layer like thin layers on top of each other to create like a blended kind of look, because I'm gonna be for real, the biggest problem I have with Procreate is the blending tool itself. That's why like I usually prefer to use Clip Studio, but you know, it is what it is. I found that this method works pretty well for Procreate, so that's just what I do for most of this. And then now that the blush is done, I fixed the eyes a little bit. As you can see, it's time for the nose. This horrific tiny little pinprick plastic surgery nose. Do you see how big I made that little like cartilage area for the nostril compared to the rest of the nose? Anyway, when I zoomed out, like you can see that the original nose bridge was like so deep in the face that it didn't really look right. Made the bottom part of his face look like it was like jutting out. So I raised the nose bridge. As you can see, I added some blush because God knows this drawing needed some life to it. And you can see now I'm adding like the highlights. This is like one of my favorite parts. I love to add the highlight, and I love to use like a blue color or like a green color, something that isn't the skin, and I put it under the nostril and on the like corners of the mouth, and I also put it like higher up. I'm not sure when that comes in, but you'll see it. I add it like higher on the nose bridge, like next to the eye. You can see here, this is me struggling with the blending tool. I tried to use it for this part, but I mean, I defaulted to how I usually do it. Okay, key point here, you guys. Look, do you see that? I just added light in the nostril. Ugh. Just needed to point that out because that's one of my favorite parts of doing a nose. It's just, it just adds so much. Boo! Oh my god, the original is such a jump scare, I can't. But anyway, time to move on to the eyebrows. You can see the original, I kind of made like the hairs all go in the same direction. I don't really vibe with that right now. Like, I prefer to just outline it and then like with lower opacity, like just go sideways. Like, it's when you're like doing a stylized version, it's like not supposed to look like a real person, but it's supposed to look ish like a real person. So when you make the hair and like the eyebrows look too defined with like every individual strand, it ends up looking so like weirdly uncanny. Like if you've seen like the Shrek movies, that's what it reminds me of. It's like a little too rendered compared to the rest. I don't know. You get it. You get it. Next up, I fixed the lips and like the jaw chin area. The jaw was way too like pointy and forward. Same with the bottom lip. And it kind of gave him like the crescent moon head. So the top lip was fine. I fixed like the fill trim where the top lip connects to the nose. But I kept the shape of the top lip mostly the same, like the length. But I pushed back the bottom and the chin, and you can see I kind of like fixed where the middle of the top lip kind of curves up. And then that's me just defining, reshading. I darkened the area under the lower lip because without it, it looked way too flat compared to the rest of the face. Now I'm adding some color to the lips to fix that awful cadaver gray I decided to go with the first time. And I do this thing when I do lips where I put a lighter color in like that little bulge area coming in from the skin. I find that it does a lot to make it look more three-dimensional. I also do this other thing where I put a saturated dark red on the bottom lip close to where the two lips meet. Not exactly all the way up until it, like you can kind of tell there's like a little strip of like a lighter color where like directly where the lips meet. But I find that like adding that red in the middle, it just kind of like, it just makes the lips look more realistic. It does make it look a little bit like they're thirsty or like a vampire or like just dehydrated, but you know, I like that look. So here is the face like mostly finished. I do go back for some touch-ups, but this is just me comparing and contrasting and saying like what else there needs to be fixed. I go in, oh my god, the ear, I forgot I did this. The ear needed some serious fixing, okay? Like it looked dead. Like it looked like ears are like red, you know, but it looked like it rotted. Okay, I'll stop. You could see I'm going in with like way more saturated colors this time, and like I like, okay, this is a little selfish because it's based on my own anatomy, but I like making like the top cartilage pretty thick because I like also have like kind of like thick cartilage. It made my piercing really painful, but you know, that's off topic. Yeah. I also love a little drop shadow under the ear and then like highlighting that drop shadow with like a brighter skin tone like right under it. You can kind of tell. And now like I'm doing kind of the back of the neck because it looked really flat before. And yeah, I'm just using a darker color. And I go in with a second I guess you could call it a light source. I usually pick a blue or a green, and I didn't do it very often throughout this one, but on my other drawings I always do like go over the whole thing with like if there's shadows anywhere, I add a second light source that's a cooler tone for the skin, because I find that it just makes it pop. And you can see now I've moved on to the hair. The hair was a mess. The hair was Shrek rendering hair, okay? So it all needed to be covered. There was no subtle fixing. I just had to start over. I just went over with like a flat color first, and then I added the shadows. And here you can really tell, like I'm adding the blue right now. This is kind of what I was talking about. I usually add more to the skin, but in this case the lighting didn't really work out for the skin, but the hair did, so that's what I'm doing. I usually add like, you can see I color selected the skin tone and went like around the border of the face with it and kind of blended it out. I find that like I don't know, it just looks better to have like less saturated hair around the actual face. It just kind of, I don't know, it just works. Now I take like a darker brown color and separate the hair into chunks. You gotta treat the hair like chunky ribbons. Like strand by strand like I was doing it before is so not it, okay? It looks like what I was talking about, like the Shrek Uncanny Valley rendering. No offense, Shrek, but it just didn't look right, you know? It's gotta be chunks. You gotta make it chunks. Chunks and ribbons. And then, okay, full disclaimer, hair is never what I'm most confident about when I'm drawing. Like even when I was doing this, I approached it kind of scared. Okay, I didn't know how the hair was gonna work out, if it was gonna work out at all. I think it did, so, which is why I'm explaining it now. So I do think you can take something out of the way I did it, but I just want to put a little tiny, teeny weeny warning that it's not what I'm most confident about. So if you don't agree, I get it. I probably won't agree in the future, but you know, that's just what it is. You can see after adding the chunks, I kind of, you know, did like the individual strands. I defined them with a darker color, like especially around the face, because I want it to be like obvious that there's strands around the face. And then you can see I use like not a mid-tone, it's definitely like darker than a mid-tone, to kind of like shade the outer edge into the inside. And then I used a lighter, like more golden color to focus the light source in the center of the hair. And I kind of use like lines. You can see like I use lines horizontally, some vertically. And then I used a darker color, a darker brown, and used it on a really low opacity and kind of blended it top down. And you can see now I'm doing it at the bottom in the blue, just to like soften everything up. And then after this point, it's kind of like, you know, mindless rendering. I stayed using the dark brown, kind of not the darkest brown, still a dark brown, and like you can see the blue now, and using it at a low opacity, making everything look a little bit softer. And then the best part, in my opinion, is coming up, which made the hair come together, and it made me happy, which is after doing this like golden, defining the light a little bit, I went with like the brightest color, like the point light source, okay, the highlight. And I picked like a greenish bluish color. You remember how I said I use the highlight on the face, a greenish bluish color like around the nose? It's kind of the same idea. And I put that like in the center, like you'll see it, I put it in the center. And I feel like you have to keep it in like a little area, otherwise it's not gonna work. It's gonna look like, I don't know, it's just gonna look like you don't know what you're doing. But when you specify in a like tiny little point, it's like, oh, you know exactly what you're doing. You know where the light source is. You're not, you know, blindly, just amateurly rendering just to render. And now what I'm doing right now is also what I think brings the hair together, which is getting a light color, not the lightest, okay, you can see it's kind of like a warm brown, and making little triangles of light in between the dark areas of the hair kind of like, it looks like the hair is splitting open and there's like a highlight under it. That, okay, that's one thing that I can confidently recommend, because I find that every time I do that, it improves the way the hair looks. Another thing is I go in with black and kind of define the strands, like the in-between strands, a little bit. And the reason I use black is because I don't like to center like the darkest point in the whole drawing in one area. So I use black in the pupil, and it looks kind of crazy to just have like black pupils and then black nowhere else. So I use that to kind of spread out the contrast and like kind of tie in the whole thing and make the shades just look more cohesive. Something else, you can see on the left, there's like his bang kind of like swoops, and it suggests that like it swoops over and the underlayer is showing. And whenever that happens, I like to make that underlayer a lighter color, preferably like on the tone of like white or whatever their background is, because like actual hair in light, it's like transparent, it's not like a sheet. So I like to make that lighter to kind of suggest that it's further away, and it helps to differentiate like the dimension of the hair. So you can see I'm doing that right now with like that lighter like golden color. And it's a lot more obvious in my other drawings, but it is an example here for this little bang, so I'm pointing it out just so it could help. I find that it adds a lot to the hair whenever I draw something. Like, I like to define the front and back of the hair. And guess what? We're done. You can see the before and after. Before is horrifying, and the after is a lot better in my opinion. If you like this video, that's awesome. Thank you for liking it. And if you have any other like suggestions for what you want to see, I know a lot of people want like really specific tutorials, like they want specifically for the skin, specifically for clothes, you know. So I might do those. This was really fun. I didn't realize how much I enjoyed talking. I was very nervous, but I think, you know, I did my best. So hope to see you again. Thank you.